Welcome back. I'm going to quickly now run through how we paint our landscape. So this is the little mountainous range that we made before, and before I do this little video tutorial, I will point out that at the moment this is running in full screen mode, so when you're opening an image it uses AGK's file browser commands, which pops you back to desktop, so I apologise, it's going to get a little bit bitty, but we'll try and see if we can get through it. So what I'm going to do first off is just jump into paint mode. So as I mentioned in the previous video, the landscape is comprised of 8 layers at the basic level. And then we can layer some grass and some paths on top of that. But here we see how we then do that. So it's quite straightforward and simple. Here we see the base level here and texture layers 1 through 7, and down at the bottom here there's a selection of brushes. Now I will massively expand on this, but this basic 12 brushes are just in here to start with, and it's quite straightforward. Once you've selected your brush and you've selected your texture, which is done just using the mouse wheel, so you scroll up and down to change the texture you're painting with, you literally just paint on the landscape. So first thing I'm going to do is just click here and change my base texture. So it's just going to pop up a standard texture editor, and you can use any image you want. It doesn't matter if it's not power of 2, the AGK World Builder will completely sort that out for you. So in this particular instance I'm going to pick this ground texture, and I'm just going to throw that down and everything. Okay, so that's my base layer now set. So that is now going to appear right across this entire chunk. Now what I will just quickly show you if I nip across is I've just crossed into another chunk, and it has its complete own set of textures. So every single chunk has completely unique textures, but the way that the tiling works, that if you use the same base texture, or indeed the same texture in the same slot between two chunks, painting at the edges with that will create a seamless join. So you can create, if you so wished, one massive landscape. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go texture layer 1, and I'm going to pick a different texture layer. So in this case I'm going to pick this dirt layer here, and it's going to jump back in. Now if I just click the left mouse button, boom, it paints that shape just on the ground there. So I can do it over and over. I can literally just drag it over like a paintbrush to create larger areas if I so wish. Now when you're painting it's just left to paint, but like everything else, hold down shift and the function reverses. So holding down shift in this case fades it off. Now this one is set to tier at the moment, the fading, so it doesn't erase it completely. You have to do it multiple times if you want to completely and utterly erase the texture, and that gives you a nice broken up appearance to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to swap over to this other brush here, which this tends to work quite well, and I'm just going to randomly dot some of this across the landscape to paint on some texture imagery. So, and what I might do is just add in a third texture. So let's find that one I'll do for now. Cracked earth texture. It's going to pop back, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint this across around the edges here. Now the advantage of having the fading is that I can then do this and slowly just taper it in, and you can see I can use it to create this lovely blended effect here. If I just pop up here, I can also use this one here, which has just a much more subtle effect. So this allows you to create kind of broken up textures that don't look like they're tiled and don't look like they repeat. And the tools you've got in to do this, they are quite powerful, and once you get used to playing about with them, you can create some quite interesting effects quite quickly, actually. I like to use this one just to remove parts of a texture and make it a little bit more interesting, make it a little bit more broken up, as you can kind of see there. Now what I will also point out, if I just flick down to this one, and I'm just going to bring up a solid brush just now, if I paint this layer here and create a nice big solid circle, and then jump to the one above it, you can see that also creates another one. Now what I can do is I can start erasing the one underneath it, and you see they work completely independently. So even though they will blur at the edges, they erase and paint independently of each other. So if I just flip back into this one, do that one, and then put that down, you can start to see where I've erased the one underneath it, but it hasn't overlapped it. And that is as complicated as painting in AGK World Builder gets. Select your texture, draw it on the landscape. And as I say, the texture can be any shape you want. It doesn't have to be a power of 2. This is quite a good one. I like this one for mountains and such forth like that. Scroll with the mouse wheel to pick the one you want, select the brush that you want, and then start painting away. Hold down the left mouse button to paint, or just click it to put random stamps. Hold down shift and click to remove the landscape. Drop back out, and that is how we start to paint and build up our world. Next time, we'll start looking at grass and paths.